We were just talking before we started the call about how you spend about half of the year on the road visiting the different SAP labs. So it makes you inherently deeply invested in globalization and deeply aware of what's happening all over the world. And I loved in an article you were writing, you quoted Andy Grove of Intel, and his quote was, "You have no choice but to operate in a world shaped by globalization and the information revolution. There's just two options: adapt or die," which is
Yeah.
Andy Grove's stark communication. But tell us about what you think. What does today's globalization look like? Where might we go next?
Yeah, this is, I would say, a super interesting question because globalization has really changed, and specifically in the technology world. When I started at SAP, I would even say till 10, 15 years ago, right? It it didn't matter really where you would create a product in this world, and also where your data would be stored and who would access the systems and from where and so on. So the IT world, I would say, was really completely globalized, based on agreed industry standards, often driven, of course, from the United States, because many of the internet standards, of course, come from there. But these are industrial standards, right? And then, but that has changed, right? Because the awareness of the importance of data, of IT infrastructure has grown, not only in the industry, but also, of course, with governments, right? So governments across the globe also have been starting to introduce rules and laws and cybersecurity laws, privacy laws, of course, for the data, and all for the good reasons, right? But that, of course, makes the globalization of data much more complex today. Yeah, so you can't just say, okay, I have customers around the globe and all my data is stored, yeah, wherever, whether it's now Canada or Germany, and then everybody just accesses this from across the globe. This will, in many instances, not be possible anymore. Yeah, or it requires lots of compliance processes and agreements by those people whose data you are storing, and therefore we see certainly, on the one hand side, that the world is, I wouldn't say decoupling. I know this word is used quite often, but I don't see a real decoupling, because we are needing each other. But certainly that the globalization also runs in different speeds in different areas or regions. But still, we see that the best products, the best ideas still can make global impact. Therefore, we still have, of course, many products that are available globally and also used globally. The well-known phone companies are a very good example of devices that you can buy and operate in Canada, in the US, and in China, and in India, and elsewhere. And so it is possible also to operate in this more complex world in IT.
So more of a move towards, continuing to be sort of borderless for the consumer,
Yeah,
but for the enterprise, a lot more attention to regional regulations and rules, and it's not.
exactly, right. Give you just a very simple example. A friend of mine who moved recently from China to Germany brought all his Chinese cool devices back to Germany, including the vacuum cleaner, the robot that cleans your house, etc. Nothing of this worked because the device just told him, "You're operating me outside of China. I have no permission to work here." so, so that means none of these devices he could operate there. He asked me, "Do you want this? Take it back to China. You can use it there."
Excellent. Oh, it makes it really real. Um, well, that's a helpful calibration around both your role and how SAP manages its labs globally, and then what we see in terms of global trends and globalization. Um, let's zoom into AI. That is really the topic that everybody wants to talk about today. And I have to tell you, I'm pleased to say we've got some BC Tech members on the line today that are it participated in our AI accelerator stream that was very focused on AI solutions for supply chain. So very relevant. But perhaps we could just turn it over to you. Tell us what you're seeing in AI. What are you excited by? What are you paying attention to? What might you be concerned about?
Yeah. Okay. Then the session is over if I if I put this in a large detail, but maybe in brief, right? I mean, AI, of course, there's a huge excitement at this point in time. But we also have to understand that AI is not really exactly a new topic. I mean, the first ideas of how to automate things and have robots doing things human-like are a few thousand years ago already. The term AI is also already 70 years old, and there were also phases of hypes and disappointments throughout those 70 years since we really speak about AI, which is precisely 1955. Yeah. So, and also at SAP and many other companies, we have been using AI a lot for the analytics of business data, for prediction specifically. So AI for the purpose of predicting the future, so to say, predicting what's going to happen in a supply chain, in a agricultural scenario, or even in a cancer treatment. Yeah, this is there for I would say 5 to 10 years really as products. Yeah? But now, of course, we've been moving into a new phase of these large language models, and that is again kind of a mini revolution within the sphere of AI, because it changes the way we can operate with computers, with systems. And what we, for example, really take a lot of focus on right now is, if you think about an ERP system like an SAP system, how do I communicate with the system in the future, right? So far, it's very clear. If you have a role like me, you want to look in certain numbers, into revenues, or what your employees are doing. You call some reports in the system that somebody has pre-thought for you and say, okay, show me my global team and who's on leave today. Just simple. But you need to know where to go, right? You need to know the system, you need to know the menu, and this is also how most of the software today works, whether it's a Word or any other software product. And in the future, if we can just with our language really talk to our systems and say, hey, give me my today's sales compared to the rest of the world, and also tell me what my 5 competitors do last year, so that I can have a good feeling, am I on a good path or not? Then this is a very different way how we communicate also with business software, right? And therefore we also said we are not creating yet another large language model at SAP. We are using the existing ones there, but we are creating a business AI on top, which will make it very different to operate these systems than in the future. So this is more on what are the capabilities of AI. What I also, of course, see is that AI will go and become more, I would say, not like human, but also become a bit more in critical thinking, reflect really what humans would sometimes do when they face questions, and maybe also start self-reflecting the own answers. And that is also something from the trend, what the capabilities of AI will be probably able to do. But being a global manager, I have an even stronger focus on the topics of ethical AI. So what does it really mean? What does it mean in different countries? Responsible AI. How is an AI responsible in China vis-a-vis maybe in Canada, right? So the type of expectations to such a system is very, very different. And Canada was at the forefront, actually the first country having an AI strategy in the world. So therefore, it has already thought very early, 6-7 years ago, about what should AI do for our country? How can it help the country? And how do we make it also acting responsibly? And I believe these are questions that are not fully answered, and where indeed your background, your culture, your legal framework, make a huge difference how you answer these questions. And then we see global products, but we see maybe different versions of AI, so to say. And that is going to be a very interesting discussion, how we are solving this, right? Because we are just, as human beings, we are not the same, but you would expect AI to react in a certain way that is very close to your own beliefs. So therefore, and that is a very new phase, which is now opening here in front of us.
I think that's fascinating, and at least to me, a new thought that I haven't seen endlessly rehashed on the internet. So I remember reading something in an article that you had written, which is, when we talk about technology, we're always very focused on the present and the future. But everything that we do is informed by the past and history. And that couldn't be more true than in AI and data learning. And that point that you raised there about things not being value free, in fact, data sets not being globally demographically representative. There are larger data sets for some questions in some jurisdictions and some value sets, and that will necessarily drive what the AI engine is developing on top of it. So
that's right.
And your point as well is, when you think about what an ERP system does for you, and I'm thinking back to an SAP implementation I did once in a past life. There's what the software can do, and then there's what's the business questions that you need to ask and have answered. And you need to understand both of those in order to use the ERP system well. So I can really see how AI starts to become a powerful enabler of your business.
That's right. And then there are also really interesting new questions there, because so far, let's say, the authorization, what you can use in an ERP system is defined, right? You have your authorization profile, and so you click on a report and it will just say that's not for you, or you may not even see that report, right? So, but now you start talking to your system, and it will continuously tell you, no, this information unfortunately is not for you, and so on. So we need also to deal with these kind of situations and think about very intelligently how we solve this, because it's not just a given. Many things we thought in the past were really made for the ERP of the past, and now if we can address the system in a very new way with internal and external data, we also have to think about how will the system answer, and how will we also avoid frustrations of the user to be all the time being told, sorry, that's not for you, right? Because that's very different from the large language models in the internet, right? Because that's information available to all. Yeah, but in an ERP system, this information is protected by the company, by access rights, by laws. And therefore, indeed, we cannot just say, yeah, sure, here's your question, here's your answer. Right? So, and our colleagues right now spend quite a lot of effort in defining this and seeing how could this possibly work. And that's why we see the first applications now also, which we have shown to the public, let's say in a product like Concur, which is travel management, right? Where you can then just say, hey, I want to go from A to B, and what is probably the best hotel for me when I would also like to have a cool bar there, right? And then Concur gives you this answer, but that's information that is basically drawn from public sources. It would be much more difficult if you would say, and by the way, I would like to see how are my travel expenses against my budget and the budget of everybody else. So here again, authorization concepts immediately play a role.
So interesting. Although I would like to say, am I taking the best route?
Yeah.
Optimize my route based on my colleagues' learnings. Is there anything that you're really concerned about, that you're worried about, or as someone who's deeply immersed in using these technologies, you think it's something that we should really be reflecting on, perhaps more than we are today?
Yeah, I think we need definitely to where I'm not concerned about that AI takes over the world and that we are landing up in a scenario where human beings are not required or even extinct, right? So this is not really what I would find as a real threat, because I believe we will still create the rules for the AI and make sure that we are still in control and we have backup systems and we know also how to switch it off. But I also accept that others have other opinions on exactly that point. But what my concern is rather that we leave too much to AI. It sounds so logic what comes out, right? And if you, for example, today communicate with ChatGPT, we all fall into this trap to say, okay, here are the 6 points. No, that sounds all reasonable to me. Nobody double checks anymore. What is the source of this? Why is this answer created in that way? And we may become all a little dumb, right, after some time by just taking for granted what all these systems tell us, just believing after sometimes AI anyway knows better because AI knows everything. Yeah? So therefore, that we keep the skill of critical thinking, of questioning the system. And that's, by the way, something very interesting. You can obviously re-ask and so on. Maybe the new skill of the future is just how to create the smartest prompt. But it's, of course, a valid question also, should this be all we know about the world? that we know how to create prompts in the future. So here I have definitely some concerns, yeah, because I see the massive usage of these new tools through my own children, right, who are at university and so on. And I'm asking myself sometimes, hey, if you just don't really go through sources anymore, try to verify yourself why this point is probably valid, is this maybe good enough, yeah, in the future? Or would we lose also some capabilities altogether? Yeah?
It's a great point. I think harnessing the tool and thinking about how we can best harness and use the tool best. I had a conversation at our CTO SaaS C Council recently.
Yeah.
And the big takeaway I took from it was they were saying, I'm happy for anyone in my team to use any AI tools, but I really want my senior engineers to use it, not my junior engineers. Because my senior engineers can make most use of it and can spot the errors and the fictions and ask the second question. And I thought that was a really interesting observation. They also shared that their junior engineers were more interested in using the tools than their senior engineers. That was quite.
Yeah, because it makes you always look smart, right? You have a question, you already have 4 points lined up and so on. But then also, when you use, let's say, LinkedIn, right? It meanwhile proposes to you, hey, let AI help you to write your article whatsoever. I find also the diversity of articles will shrink very soon now, yeah, because this kind of really good ones and maybe really bad ones, or maybe opinionized articles that create really some discussions and so on. This would go really down in numbers if everybody just uses now AI-driven tools to write these articles. I haven't tested it, but I will certainly do to just experience it, what comes really out of it. But that's another thread that we don't maybe think about the edges, the unlikely things, whatever kind of scenarios and so on, because AI will probably try to give us the mainstream answer.
I'm just going to turn now to the chat because we've got a couple of really interesting observations. So Gail, who's in Vancouver, is focused on asset-intensive industries such as manufacturing and utilities, and she's saying every organization I've consulted to has inaccurate, incomplete, and missing data. Big data analytics that includes AI and ML are data dependent. What's your approach to addressing this problem, including IT-OT integration? So do you have anything you can offer to Gail on that?
Yeah, I think this is a dilemma which Gil really describes that is true, right? So on the one hand side, you have too much data, and then there's also missing data, right? So to draw certain conclusions in a fully correct way. And I think specifically for that reason, it is also important to always, what I just said, to remain a bit critical on the answer, to take this as a suggestion sometimes, to say, okay, AI suggests to do this, but on the other hand side, one has also probably experiences the system does not have. Otherwise, we could really run completely automated companies, right? Where everything is just decided by the system because the system would anyhow know best. But our world is too complex, yeah, and it has too many variables. And indeed, I also have never seen any computer system that would even tell me what should I do tomorrow, yeah, to run my area of control. Because there are 17 countries where all kind of things are happening. I have so many different personalities in my team. They do all kind of decisions, many very logical, some maybe very emotional. And all of this, a system cannot really foresee. And I think we should also not try probably to reach 100%, right? Would make the world also a bit boring. But it should be as accurate as possible. Yeah, I mean, of course, when I want to predict a treatment for an illness, I want it to be as accurate as possible. And then the chances, even if not all data is there, the chances that this treatment based on that data is now the best one, or a quality check of a product is just higher, so much higher, even if the data is incomplete. So, I mean, I lived 12 years in India. In India, I've certainly also learned that you can reach brilliant results, even with maybe sometimes incomplete data or assumptions, because the world is changing around you very quickly. So the tolerance for error in my experience in India is just higher, right? And the tolerance of ambiguity, right? In Germany, where I come from, everything has to be known before I move left or right. And in India, it's very different. So therefore, I believe we need probably here a little bit more of that culture also to say, okay, we can live also with a certain amount of ambiguity, and in the end, leave the final decision to us.
And that's very much what Michael is saying in the chat. He thinks that in the near future, AI's main role in many businesses will be to perform those large searches and summarize information for decision makers. So rather than give a decision, just give options. And thank you, Rolf, for your book recommendation, Rebooting AI by Gary Marcus. So, okay, well, I feel like I fulfilled the promise of the session that we would do a deep dive on AI. Perhaps we could connect the dots of a couple of conversations that we had earlier. So just explicitly going back to the question of globalization and what you see in the different SAP labs around the world, and this question of AI. Do you see different developments in different locations, and what would be the linkage of those topics?
Yeah, I think it's a very relevant question, because starting maybe from the culture aspect, which I was just referring to on the answer to Gail, certainly the way how innovation is happening in different countries is very different. And this is also a reason that we are in so many countries. And it starts from the innovation systems, so what's the expectation from governments, from regulators, but also what is the acceptance in a society. Like in China, according to a study I just read, 79% of all people have a very positive view on AI and how AI makes their life more convenient and easier. In the US, in the same study, this number was at 37%, and in Germany, even lower. Canada, I don't know now. I don't know whether the study was done in Canada. But that being said, you see already the adaptation and adoption of new technology is very different. That means you can do different things today in China or India maybe than you could do in North America. And because consumers would just say, hey, great, I try this out. The same is true for the usage of data, right? So when we want to, let's say, do an AI-driven product, we have different access to data in different countries because the local regulation around the data are very different. So there are countries where health data anonymized is made available to companies who have an interest and also do this together maybe with a research university. Whereas in Germany, where I know the rules also very well, this is not thinkable, right? Even anonymized patient data is not available for research by and large, I would say. So therefore, that makes it also then for companies who have a global footprint easier to say, okay, I go to this country and research this, develop some algorithms, but then I can probably also use this elsewhere. And so use the one advantage also to the advantage of others, by keeping in line with all the rules and regulations. So it's multiple aspects of this globalization in terms of what you are permitted to do, also how the customer is adopting technology, and then also how people factually innovate. Like in my years in India, I said it, with the high acceptance of ambiguity, our Indian engineers also tried different things, trial and error. Oh, doesn't work, let's try something different. And then they also reach a goal. Whereas in Germany, where I learned basically my basics of engineering, it was all about planning and pre-thinking and then sometimes deciding it better don't even start because I already foresee all the problems coming my way. So both approaches have their pros and cons, and they're both valid, right? And the merging of this will be the secret, right? And now in AI, we have this huge opportunity to really merge different approaches into different flavors of that AI. Maybe even making for customers these different flavors accessible. I mean, I'm dreaming here a little bit. It's not that I'm announcing a new product strategy here, but it could also happen. I mean, we have localization of our products for more than 50 countries. Why not also having the AI part localized in a way that it communicates and also gives different results depending on what the expectations are or the acceptance also.
I think that's a great point. What are the expectations of the person using the AI? What is the tolerance for ambiguity and approach to critically addressing the proposals made? I'm going to go back to the chat because I'm really thrilled to see how many questions we're getting there. So, here's one interesting one from Neil. Will AI significantly lower entry barriers and increase challenges for established players? How might it play out? Wow, that's a shot across the bow, Clas.
It's a very good question because there are two schools of thought here, right? I mean, some say, with OpenAI or so, the entry barriers are lower, right? The other school of thought is it's only very few companies right now that have the capability to really run these LLMs, right? And probably one day they may decide it's not open anymore, right? So we restrict it and we make it only fully accessible for our own benefit as a company or for our own customers and so on. So therefore, there's also a certain threat that actually only a very few companies would be able to leverage fully the benefits of AI. Also, the access to AI from in certain countries versus other countries is a area of concern. So that there are scholars who also say it's actually not inclusive, right? Because in some of the poorer countries in the global south or so, many of these things may not be possible because the collection of data is so expensive, etc., etc. So it is something where we haven't really come to a conclusion. I personally also haven't come to a conclusion, but I am an optimist from my general worldview. So I hope indeed that AI will open more opportunities for more people. And even on the people level, that there's this discussion, will so many jobs go away? My hope is also that the new upcoming jobs will be more interesting, more enriching, and give more opportunities in the end. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, don't worry, audience, because I am going to come back to AI, but I'd like to just take that question from Neil in a slightly different direction, because one thing I did want to talk to you about, Clas, is how enterprise companies can co-innovate with startups. And I think this concept of, does it reduce barriers to entry? Does it provide new inroads, new ways in which startups could partner with enterprise to co-innovate and deliver things? So let's focus on just that for the moment. How do you find it works? What works well? What hasn't worked so well when a company as large as SAP has tried to engage with a startup?
Yeah, we have, of course, lots of learnings there because we are engaging with startups really across the globe. And it's clear the unique opportunity for startups in cooperating with a large corporation like SAP is certainly our global footprint, right? So you are a small startup in Vancouver, you want to globalize, and SAP brings you and your product on the price list, and all of a sudden the product is available for the whole world and for all these 350,000 customers of SAP across the globe. So this is the, how can I say, the golden opportunity. But then at the same time, to reach there, there are multiple threats also for startups, right? And this cannot always be thought before. A startup has a certain culture. It's used to react fast to demands, to change the product in light speed. And specifically me living in China, the kind of speed in which products getting changed and so on is unbelievable. And a big company, of course, has existing customers. So we can't just throw out every day new changes, etc. This will make many of our customers very nervous. So we have certain product cycles. And then this kind of difference in speed may also irritate the partners then, and or the expectation. How impactful is this product really, right? And then also it can happen that in the end, a company just decides, oh, this is such a cool feature, we build it ourselves. So, I mean, all of this I have seen happening, right? And for all of these scenarios, I think one needs to be open up front. One needs to also, of course, make contracts to make sure that the interests of the startups are also protected, and also know what are the exit points when we say, okay, this really doesn't work and so on. Like, we had also cases where in the end it turned out, it looked all cool, but then really the quality, it could never match what our customers, for example, would expect. And then one would end it. But we also have cases where the startup came to us and said, guys, in your speed, we will never really reach the market. So we would like to go on our own again, and thank you for your help and support. So but thankfully we also have successful examples, right? And also here in Canada, right, with Plum, right, which is a more of an analytics tool, psychometric, or with Gnocchi or so. We have a couple of examples where the collaboration works quite well. But we need to learn constantly from when it didn't work, why didn't it work, and then how can we make it really better. This is very clear.
That's really helpful, very helpful, and a good framing as well. I think my message to startups on the line would be to engage creatively, but understand two very different cultures. But there's a lot that can be learned to improve your product and your processes, and what would be required for this to be rolled out by a company like SAP. There's a lot to be learned, even if you don't get that quite golden ticket of a single into 350,000 SAP customers. So definitely partner, and BC Tech for Startups program will create those connections for you with people at SAP. So now I do want to go back to the chat and pick up some of the questions that we didn't get to yet, because we've got some great questions on this call. David's asking, given the ability of AI to create deep fakes, is this the end of truth in the media? How are we going to be able to tell what's true from what's fake?
This a very good question, because we all have seen this kind of fakes, whether it's fakes in terms of news items that really sound very well done, or because it's a good match of reality and a little fake maybe in the middle and so on. And then, of course, with pictures, right? We all have looked at these pictures of whatever, somebody meeting someone, but these people really never met in reality. And they're really, really well done. My solution to this is I always double check the source. So try to see where did this item appear first. And I'm very careful with news items that just pushed into a chat or so, where somebody says, have you seen this? And then I see already from the chat, nobody can really say who did this picture, for example, right? And what was the media that published it first? Not saying that even media has been prone to publish wrong things, yeah, but they, of course, I think most of the established media tries very well to make sure they have only genuine items written by people they know and photographed by people they know. But then that is probably, again, something I would advise to everybody. Try to find the source of this first before even distributing it further. So I'm also very, very careful in forwarding things when I have not been convinced myself that this is a genuine news. And the more unlikely it looks and sounds, probably the more unlikely it is that it's real. So of course, it's sensational, and everybody wants to share these things, but and it can be sometimes simple news items, like in our WeChat groups in China recently, there came all of a sudden a blast of news that the state council announced new rules to foreigners, that they were actually very positive rules. And I immediately double checked on the homepage there. Have they really now? Because it sounded a little unlikely to me, but they did, right? And therefore, then it's the moment when I say, okay, fine, even in my role as president of the German chamber in Shanghai, I can forward this news as real. But not when the first person sends it to me, I would not just press the forward button into my own followership or community.
So interesting. So another example of how that sort of border-free, barrier-free global world is evolving into a trusted source. Where did you hear of it? So that sense of some sources being more valuable than others reemerging.
Yeah, and as I said, this notion of trust is something that is also for us in an SAP system. You trust the SAP system, right? Because it's always based on your data. Now you come with AI that starts interpreting data and comes to its own conclusion on it. So, but that trust we have created over 50 years should not gone away because all of a sudden an AI starts to fantasizing about the data or drives to certain crazy conclusions. So therefore, we will be very careful to ensure that trust will be the first guidance for all engineers, right? And not the latest fancy hype in the end, right? Even if it means that not every application will be fully AI enabled with LLM in the next 2 days. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm thrilled to see that the chat has taken on a life of its own, with people asking and answering questions to one another, which is fantastic. Thank you for creating a really great forum that's sort of running in parallel, which is fabulous. Before I go back to the chat to pick up a question, I do want to ask one other question that fascinates me. So you run all these different labs around the world, all innovators, all engineers trying to solve some of the same problems, some different problems. You must see, we've touched on it already, very different cultures coming out, the culture in India versus the culture in Germany. Tell us about the Canadian culture and how might you contrast, what is the least Canadian of the other labs that you manage, and how would you typify them?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good question, Jill. And when I come to Vancouver, I sometimes tell my colleagues, our lab in Vancouver, right, and to some extent also to Montreal, but in Vancouver it's even more pronounced, is a kind of a mini version of those 21 labs, right? And because here I really meet colleagues who have started their career with SAP in India or in China. Just yesterday I had 2 colleagues who were previously working for us in China, or in other parts of the world. So it's a very, very diverse group of colleagues who's always here in front of me. And that makes this location, specifically British Columbia, very unique. So one could even imagine here when I say, hey, we have this advantage because we have 21 labs across the globe. And this is all here together in one. And if I want to think about a diverse and responsible AI, maybe here in Vancouver, people could say, yes, we are able to do this because we have these cultures all here. And we are kind of a blend of all of this. And that makes our software engineering here in Canada, certainly very, very specific. And as I also mentioned, the government here has been also very, very proactive in terms of AI. And one should not underestimate this, that there's a strategy, that there was always funding here in the technologies. The universities started very early to really upgrade their AI curricula and so on. And we see this now also in the talent that is joining our company, the deep knowledge they have, the interest and so on. So it's moving quicker here, at least in many of the universities, than we would observe outside of Canada. So this is what I observe, what is different and what helps also us as a company. And that's also why we were been growing in Canada and also here in Vancouver over the last years in terms of headcount and engineers. And obviously you have also seen many companies coming in, right, from other countries developing software here.
That's excellent. And yes, Cindy, I see you in the chat. Diversity is us. Go Canada. That's our superpower. So really appreciate that answer. And that gives us a good sense, I think, of what our unique value proposition is and what we should be emphasizing and doubling down on in order to make the most of Canada and BC's tech success in the world. So I really appreciate that. Is there anywhere else in the world that you'd highlight for us that is has a really distinct personality that is interesting to reflect on?
Yeah, certainly. What comes into my mind is also Israel, right? We have a lab there with about 1,000 employees. And here also the culture is very, very, very special, right? I think it has also to do with that everyone lives in this relatively small country, and every product they think needs to be a global product because that home market is so super small, right? So in Israel, you would find every startup immediately thinking global, yeah? And then also the mindset, the culture, of course, maybe because our colleagues are, how can I say, they appear to have a bit of a different worldview, right? Maybe they have to do 3 years military service before they or after they study often, right? So they apply what they have been studying in defense technology and so on. And that gives them also a bit of a different view on what technology can do, the good and the bad things, so to say, which then again, we see in the innovation process, let's say the importance of security, right? A kind of a security mindset, which is very, very strong there. Yeah? So that's also something that is very distinct from other locations. Yeah? But again, if I could go from location to location, there's always something I would say, hey, this is really, really special here. In some of the Eastern European countries, like Bulgaria, right? Mathematics is the big thing, right? Many of the prize medal winners come from that country. They win all the mathematics Olympics. So there seems to be something in the education system and the culture that makes this possible. Yeah? And then we use this. We do a lot of technology also in Bulgaria. So therefore, and then, of course, China, where I live, I said it, the adoption speed, the speed of business and so on, also reflects in the way how we develop software there.
It's really interesting. I think it's so important to remember that technology is a global industry, and we each have different strengths and different things we can lean into. But it's great to get that flavor from you of what you see in some of these different centers. So let me just go back one more time to my chat and see if I can pick up another point that was raised. There was something that was really interesting, and I apologize. I'm gonna miss who said it first, but a sense that the logic behind AI's output is a bit of a black box. And so how can we interrogate the black box and get ourselves comfortable with the black box whilst it remains a black box? So
yeah, if you try to do this with ChatGPT, it's interesting that ChatGPT sometimes tells you, oh yeah, the point number 6 and 7 I invented, I was just in a good mood. So you can kind of have ChatGPT being interrogated by itself. It's quite interesting what you can do with large language models in trying to check. But on a serious note, this is, of course, a certain threat that who really still understands how the answers are generated and what were these processes, of course, in deep learning that enabled the kind of results we are getting, right? And therefore, I think it's always important that we don't blindly run with something the AI has put out, right? But as I said, not only critical thinking about it, but then also following it and see, was it right? Make once always looking back again and say, okay, back then we followed this recommendation because it came out of our system. Was it actually right? Because it will become more and more complex. The more data we use to really figure out how did the algorithm come to that decision in the end? Because only maybe a few engineers would still know, but then they may not be even with your company anymore. So it's like, it's a question also how well is code documented and so on. And some companies are better in this than others and so on. But then you have meanwhile also multiple layers of systems. So it's getting, of course, into very, very complex territory. And this leads back indeed to the question I said about trust, that we need to make sure, if in doubt, we go for the trust and not just for the most, just focusing only on the results. But also saying, if we do it that way, can this result always 100% be trusted also? So not leaving ambiguity there.
Very, very helpful. Thank you. Well, for my final question, there's something that I always ask. We've got a lot of our BC Tech for Startups members on the phone. So reflecting back and thinking what you know and your career, advice. So what advice would you give to our startups that are on the call today? They're in the early scary stages of building a business. They've got a fantastic idea. They're scrambling for customers and markets. What piece of advice would you give them?
I mean, the number one advice is try, either with the help of a corporate or yourself, to really scan very well what's happening globally. So try to connect, use opportunities like BC Tech or others to connect to startups outside also of your home market, what you probably currently see as your home market, to see, is something like this already being invented elsewhere? So, and where does it really stand? Because this is something I observe often, right? I speak to a startup in one country and say, hey, what you guys are doing, I just saw that when I was in Bangalore last month, right? So are you aware of this? So open immediately to the world, right? And I've seen this, as I mentioned, in Israel to be a very, very successful strategy for startups. So what's really unique if you see the whole world? Because very soon you will be faced with the question that you need to go global, right? And if you see let's say a very successful startup like Hopper here from Canada, right? Then this is a very good example of somebody who says, what is globally not there yet? And how can I add now in that sphere? Yeah? For travel, it may be clear that you have to think internationally. But for other things, I often see initially a bit of a too local view. And then the second thing is, indeed, if you think global, make sure you understand the rules, so that you are not getting in conflict immediately with regulations and so on. And again, here a big corporate can help to understand the rules, to say, hey, we help you to make sure you are also compliant everywhere, because this is the very beginning of our discussion. This is a very huge topic nowadays. You maybe very happily have a certain scenario running here in BC, but the same scenario already a few hundred kilometers south is not permitted. And therefore, make sure you are not running into a major legal issue, right? That could kill the company very soon. So that's important. And I think everybody else, those entrepreneurs probably know better than I in terms how to focus their business and scale it also very soon. I think that is common sense. I think everybody knows that.